Hello, everyone. Uh, today, okay, let's stop this really quick. Today, I would like to announce that I'll be continuing this series of reading *The Smith and the Knight* myself. I really enjoy it a lot. I enjoy reading it more than anything. There is a lot to read, so I could go on. I could go on for quite some time on this, and I hope that you guys will enjoy it as well. The story is far from over, and I hope to continue to make this. If you have not already checked out the story ahead of time, it is available on. It is available in the description below. I will be using an ambient track to sort of set up this little bit here, but yeah, let's go ahead and get started. This is *The Smith and the Knight*. And if you do not know what happened last time, I will quickly summarize. Stolzer was briefed on his new mission, and Alphonse was to accompany him along with their two students. They traveled to their location and had done some reconnaissance on their strange house there. So now we get to see what happens after that, because now they're given new orders to apprehend whoever's inside. So let's go ahead and get started. Stolzer and Alphonse checked their gear. They parted ways with their ward shortly after. Alphonse and Stolzer stealthily made their way to the outskirts of the enemy encampment some 100 yards away, avoiding their scouts. The Knight Undying hid behind a nearby tree and peeked out from behind the trunk. He hugged his Zweihander close to his chest and nodded to the other knight. With a small grunt, Alphonse charged from his hiding place to decapitate a guard with a single swipe of his weapon. Stolzer had dispatched his quarry with a steady thrust to the heart, and he quickly joined his partner adjacent a doorway. The patrols circled around the house like vultures. Their hooded figures seemed to drift along the ground, and both knights worked quickly to kill their opponents with a single blow. Both knights slowly entered the building with care. Their weapons were at the ready, their senses alert. Stolzer turned his head to follow Alphonse, who stumbled upon a narrow passageway into a deeper part of the house. The stench of the place was enough to cause any lesser being to vomit. The scent of decay and death, which usually followed in their ritual's wake, was all too familiar to Stolzer. Each step caused the wooden floor underneath their feet to whine and groan. Feels like a trap, Stolzer grimaced as the thought crossed his mind. His past experience... feels like a trap, Stolzer grimaced as the thought crossed his mind. His past experiences screamed at him to evacuate, but he followed after Alphonse, who seemed to be drawn to the depths of the abandoned home. Sir, we should leave. This place is not safe. Stolzer spoke to his superior in a tone unlike himself, his nerves getting the better of him. Aye, we should. However, there's not many here, and we should investigate. The Knight Undying's protective spell activated around him, the armor stitching itself over his clothes. Without another word, he was swallowed into the darkness. His gut seemed to tie itself into knots as he was frozen in place. He shook his head and headed in after him. For a spell, only the sound of his boots answered him in the blackness. The arid air, sweetened only by the scent of blood and death, tickled at his nostrils with each breath. He felt the driving need to turn back, but he swallowed his pride and continued on. A pair of hands seized him, and he activated the protective spell of his armor. Stolzer ducked to avoid a massive swipe of steel over his head. He keenly blocked another blow and illuminated the chamber with magic. Dozens of scarlet eyes focused onto him, their figures clothed in torn fabric, cloaks, other pieces of garments were stitched together in an amalgam pattern to cover rotting flesh. The stench caused him to cover his mouth instinctively, the crimson gazes glimpsing his weakness. He was seized and a fist crashed into his stomach, forcing him to his knees. A pair of men garbed in the strange assortment of clothing dragged him. There was only silence. The beings appeared to have no intention of speaking to each other. "Alphonse!" Stolzer shouted and was slugged again in the stomach. "Alphonse!" He felt another chill take hold of him as chains were fastened around his wrists and ankles. Seconds passed by like an eternity, his ears ringing from the silence. "Aye, Stolzer, I'm here." A voice reverberated in his mind. "I can sense you nearby, but we should not speak unless we are spoken to." "What?" "Yes, I know what is in store for us." Chains ringing some distance away from him answered him, as Alphonse adjusted himself. "We can't struggle." "They knew we were coming." "How do you know?" "Sacrifices were made. It's something vampires do to ensure the capture of their prey, whether or not we took note of it." Alphonse's voice now took shape in Stolzer's mind. He felt the soothing presence reach for him, seeming to calm his worries. "What's going to happen to us?" All thoughts were halted as the noise of a figure approaching reached their ears. There was only one pair of feet, though very faint, against the stone floor. "You are fortunate to have discovered us so soon in your career, Justicar." The voice was deep and caused them to shiver uneasily. "Oh, what other prey have we caught in our trap?" "He is not aware of the connection I have made with you just now." Alphonse spoke to him telepathically, sending him image after image of his memories. "Night Undying. Alphonse Mortem. You're not Mortem in blood, but carry the name quite well. I should have known it was the Mortem who were involved in such deceitful intelligence gathering. No matter, I suppose we will have a great sacrifice for our ritual this evening." "What on earth are you doing?" Stolzer replied to him with his mind, but was halted by more imagery. "One of you will return to your home after this event. I will tell you both what we are going to do, but I fear that only one of you will remember. The death wish will be prepared tonight, and you have been chosen, Alphonse." The voice now traveled to Stolzer's left and knelt to his height. The color of his scarlet eyes came to view, seeming to glow in the darkness. "You will live. You will tell Sanctuary what we have accomplished." "You can't do this," Stolzer protested, tugging at the chains to reach for the man. With each pull of his arms, the chains tightened their hold on him. "Vampire filth!" "Ah, but we must feed. Care for it or not, we all have our parts to play, and this is yours." He stood upright and his eyes faded from view. Stolzer scowled. "You are silent, Mortem. Why only greet me silence? Greet me with silence. You know who I am." "Valtieri. You work for them, and now you aid their rituals." Alphonse sounded disappointed, though hints of malice were evident in his voice. "I see you are astute. Why hide from us, Valtieri?" Stolzer spat. "If you are truly a man of courage, then face us." "Ah, courage. If I were truly a man, then I surely would have the means to face a Justicar. How can I forget the one man who gave me so much trouble all those years ago? My quarry is not with you, but the Mortem, who denied us our right to live as Sanctuary citizens many aeons ago." Valtieri's laugh echoed about the room, and he took a few steps toward Alphonse. "You must focus on me, Stolzer. I cannot repeat this, as he is on to me." Alphonse now filled his mind with more images. He felt overwhelmed with the knowledge of pouring into his brain. The death wish is forbidden magic. The magic devours those who cast it. If you cannot remember anything else from this meeting, you must tell Ovelia of my fate. She must remember who I am, otherwise I will truly die. I am flooding your mind with my own memories so that I will not die in vain, as our true enemy is not with the vampires, but the Death Wish. It is a forbidden magic which must be forgotten. Cold sweat beaded down his visage as more memories were forced into his mind. The stench of decay burst into the chamber as the doors were opened. Several beings glided to their positions and bound them once more as they were taken from their prison. Some time passed before they were met with light again. The pair were separated as the room came to view. A massive block of steel with chains locking the apparatus in place met them with a sense of dismay. The floating device hummed to life as they approached. Alphonse now being left alone to ascend the steps. His boots clanged against the steely surface, though he seemed more forlorn and broken. A chant followed shortly afterward. The acoustics of the chamber carried the voices of the vampires into a dissonance which caused him to fall to one knee in defeat. O Lord above, take this lost soul to your domain, for he hath forsaken his own existence. Heal him of his body, O Lord, for he willingly give it unto you. Countless times the chant was repeated, the block of blackened steel whirring into life. Around him the voices seemed to join now in unison, the dissonance giving way to an acoustic nightmare. Stoltzer's dark eyes widened as a massive hand descended from the ceiling. Bright light illuminated the vampires, whose prayers continued endlessly. Alphonse's protective armor dissipated into nothingness, the clothes underneath his armor disintegrating shortly after. His body lay bare, the machine releasing steam as the hand took hold of him. Slowly his head reared back, being taken now into the air by the hand, which slowly began to squeeze. Blood poured from him like a fruit, his essence following trails etched into the device. The scent of decay washed over Stoltzer like a raging ocean, his nostrils drinking the smell as the vampires all around him suffered. Several cubes around him took shape, each of the fervent rushing to the objects. Their hands gripped the shapes and were disintegrated immediately, almost as if they were being absorbed into the cube. Stoltzer, however, was still transfixed on the hand, releasing the broken and empty husk of Alphonse. His body soon after was taken by a burst of air from the machine. My God. The Justicar was now left alone, the figures vanishing into thin air. He was left with an empty feeling, the feeling of witnessing wrongdoing. Seconds passed by like aeons as he attempted to recall what he saw. His body shivered uncontrollably. The memories in his mind jumbled. 2 pairs of arms took him then, and he watched the machine before him slowly drift away. Stoltzer woke with a start. The sword of his master had been placed in his hand, and he swung at the air in reflex. His armor hadn't been activated, though he felt the draining effects of the spell. He breathed heavily, images of the dark machine and the ritual running through his mind countless times. Voices came to him in the distance, though he could not place from where. Another set of hands reached him, and a pair of eyes focused onto him. The cold, steely gaze of the Mortem, the eyes of a Sandrine overlord. What is she doing here? He thought in a daze. Who are you? What is your name? A voice to his right called to him. I... Answer him. Who are you? What is your name? I'm Stoltzer Ritter, Justicar of the Sanctuary and Templar, loyal to Her Highness and Sandrine Overlord, Ovelia Mortem. His memory, though now befuddled and torn asunder, struggled to retain his own identity. His body seemed alien, though he inhabited it. Ma'am, he's still belligerent. We should quarantine him for a few days until he recovers, a voice suggested. Yes, I agree. He appears to have been affected by the ritual. We arrived too late. Blast. Yes, take him to the medical wing. Send for his squire and page. They will need to be there for him while he rests. The orders were obeyed without question. A mask was placed over his visage, the device relieving him while causing him to drift into a deep slumber once more. Gellerherter sat on a stool next to Rena, who had checked out several books for them. His master, Stolzer, lay in bed nearby. He showed almost no signs of life aside from slow breathing. The medical wing had been composed of many beds, all aligned along the wall. Nurses and doctors strode past them, occasionally checking Stolzer's vital signs. Their uniform was white, the tabard of Sanctuary's Holy Cross, the fleur-de-lis, emblazoned in the center. Various times they spoke to Rena, the squire. When Stolzer was relieved of his emblem, it was handed to Rena for safekeeping. The Sandrine Overlord had been by several times a day to see if he had shown any progress, but never stayed long. Every window was open to allow for warm summer air to drift through the room. What's going to happen to him? Gellerherter had asked this several times, and Rena always humored him. He's resting for now. We'll know more when he wakes up. Rena calmly answered him and turned the page in her book. His gaze now shifted to a desk she had brought, and Stolzer's belongings had been placed there, few though they were. His sword, his emblem, his coin pouch, his clothes, and his boots. White garments had been pulled onto his limp body days ago, and were changed daily. He was taken for baths, and a strange device was placed over his mouth, which calmed his heavy breathing. Two others accompanied the Sandrine Overlord into the medical wing now, the smell of soot overpowering the summer wind. Eisner reached for a couple of stools on his way over and sat next to his friend. Anna took her place next to her master, though it was closer to Gellerherter. Who did this to you, old boy? The master smith muttered, his paws clutching Stolzer's hand. What monstrosity would drive you to this, old friend? Do you know what happened, miss? Anna addressed Rena, who shook her head in reply. This matter is being investigated as we speak, Eisner. Novelia spoke after a spell of silence. The smith was too dumbfounded by the reality of the fate of his friend to respond. He sobbed softly, the callous soot-stained hands gripping Stolzer's own hand, almost as harshly as his hammer. Anna, however, watched Stolzer in his coma, unsure of how to react. You will be knighted soon, Rena. Stolzer will be so proud. Ovelia smiled solemnly to the squire, who nodded in return. She set her tome down and stood upright, wiping her eyes with her sleeve. I'm sorry. I will leave you to mourn. If I have any more news, you will be informed immediately. Soon after Ovelia had departed, Eisner also stood. Come, you three. I know Stolzer will be taken care of, but we must take care of ourselves as well. The master smith smiled now, wiping his face with a handkerchief. Time for fishing. Thank you so much for listening. This has been the next chapter in The Smith and the Knight. A story about love, loss, and war. I will see you in the next recording session. Or rather, you get what I'm saying. Thank you, and have a wonderful evening.